Hello everyone and welcome back to Alternative Apex here in Imola for round 3 of the 2022 Formula 1 season. We're here for a slightly different event to what we've seen in the first two races of the season, as this will be the first time we see the sprint race used. It is a roughly 1/3 race distance sprint race that will decide the grid for the official Grand Prix. They had traditional qualifying yesterday, preparing for this, where they've set their positions for this race. However, the Grand Prix positions will be based off of this race as well. You do get some points for this race, going from 8 points for the win all the way down to 1 for 8th, but not quite as much, of course, as a full distance Grand Prix. Now it's time to have a look at the starting grid, as it is Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz locking out the front row of the grid for Ferrari on one of their two home circuits this year. Now, as we look further down the grid, we have Max Verstappen in third, Sergio Perez in fourth, locking out the second row of the grid for Red Bull. Then is Mercedes locking out the third grid, but Hamilton ahead of Russell. Then is Fernando Alonso and Kevin Magnussen, with Esteban Ocon and Mick Schumacher rounding out the top 10 there for Alpine and Haas. Then it is Lando Norris, Valtteri Bottas, Pierre Gasly, and Nico Hülkenberg. Finally looks like he's got his qualifying sorted out as he qualifies 14th for Porsche. Tsunoda and Zhou behind him, with Daniel Ricciardo and Lance Stroll behind him. Then it is Alex Albon and Pascal Wehrlein in 20th. Seems like he's perhaps lost something from his previous qualifying sessions, as Nicholas Latifi and Sebastian Vettel round out the back row of the grid. The drivers now take to the formation lap, ready for today's sprint race. Hopefully it will be an exciting one. These drivers sort of forced into being perhaps more aggressive than they would be in a Grand Prix because they have less time to make moves. So if a driver did have a poor qualifying session, this is a crucial part of their weekend in a bid to try and get more World Championship points than they perhaps would if they don't get a move on in this one. A few drivers who have qualified out of position, but not too many, as it seems like we had a fairly quiet qualifying session compared to those that we've had so far this season, because there's been lots of surprises in the first two races, so if you haven't seen them, do go back and check those out. But yes, it seems like a slightly more traditional grid, with the exception of maybe sort of the Porsches, especially Pascal Wehrlein starting way down the field, which is traditionally where we've seen Hülkenberg all season, but now it's Wehrlein, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do from that position. But the cars now lining up on the grid ahead of today's race, as we now see the final couple of cars getting into position. The lights are on, and we are racing in Imola for the sprint race. It's a great start from Charles Leclerc off of pole position. Verstappen gets a great start from third on the grid. He's already challenging Carlos Sainz as they run down towards turn 1. Charles Leclerc leads, though, as Sainz is going to try and fend off Max Verstappen, who's wedging his Red Bull down the inside, but can't quite make it happen, as the two Mercedes cars are side by side for 5th place. Russell ahead of Hamilton there at the moment, and now they stream into the next of the chicanes. This is Villeneuve they're making their way into now. Single file throughout most of the field already as they're trying to play it nice and safe, but a good start there from Charles Leclerc, who will hold the lead of the race as they make their way up through Tosa and through into the middle sector. For the first time today, it is the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc leading here on lap 1. Now we're seeing a battle already down in the midfield. It's Kevin Magnussen versus Lando Norris. Oh, Kevin Magnussen goes deep. Forces Alonso off the road. Alonso's in the gravel trap there. He's going to struggle to get back on track. He's trying to find a gap in the traffic, but so many cars streaming past him this early in the race. He's dropped all the way down to last place. That is disappointing there. Oh, it's a big spin. Lots of drama here in the early stages. That's Lando Norris. He's gone for a 360 out of Aqua Minerale. He's going to get his car going again and try and not lose too many positions, but he's under pressure now from Alex Albon in the Williams. Oh, but that's an Aston Martin. They're sending it down into. That's Lance Stroll with a very bold dive bomb. He would not have been seeing that one coming as he breaks late for the chicane. And drama all over the place here. And more drama as that's Lewis Hamilton slowing down and yellow flags are out. Lewis Hamilton is out of this race. The Mercedes driver will be starting last for the Grand Prix. That is going to be, well, exciting to watch when we see that race. But Pierre Gasly now looks like he's got ahead of a group of midfield cars. Alonso and Hamilton dropping down the order means that these guys that before were perhaps battling outside the top 10 now find themselves battling inside the top 10. Crucially for their Grand Prix tomorrow, as we see a battler. George Russell has got ahead of Sergio Perez, as we see more battling here between Kevin Magnussen and Alpine. And speaking of battling, it's Carlos Sainz versus Charles Leclerc, and it's Carlos Sainz who takes the lead here in Imola. Brilliant move there for the Ferrari driver, and he now leads the sprint race with Charles Leclerc behind him, but Charles Leclerc doesn't look like he wants to stay behind him. He's going to challenge back for the lead. He looks to the outside, he dives down the inside, they bang wheels. Oh, as Carlos Sainz nearly ends up like Fernando Alonso, his compatriot, but in the end, he is able to keep it on the track this time, and Charles Leclerc gets the lead back in this race, but lots of aggression used there, and I imagine Carlos Sainz won't be best pleased with how his teammate has treated him there, as now back into turn 1 they go. Carlos Sainz now, will he repeat the move his teammate put on him? He will, but can he make it work? This time they're a bit closer off the corner, but Carlos Sainz does, crucially, retake the lead of the sprint race here. Max Verstappen in 3rd, and let's see how this one plays out as Charles Leclerc is looking to fight back once more. Verstappen's licking his lips here, he wants to get involved in this fight, as they're side by side down to turn 1. Charles Leclerc on the outside, they're going to bang wheels, but Charles Leclerc with a brilliant move to take the lead of the sprint race on the final lap of the sprint race. Great racing here from the two Ferrari drivers, as that's a Max Verstappen challenging Carlos Sainz, but he can't quite make the move stick. The Red Bull driver has to settle for 3rd position here, as we've got lots more battles in the midfield. I believe that's Pierre Gasly. Oh, he's going to miss turn 1. Pierre Gasly on the final lap of the sprint has gone straight on in turn 1, just like Fernando Alonso did, and that is going to drop him well down the order, down to 17th there, and Nico Hülkenberg for Porsche is going to take P10, but it's Charles Leclerc who is going to take the win in the sprint race, and we'll start the Grand Prix from pole position. It's Carlos Sainz in 2nd, so those two managing to lock out the front row for the race. Max Verstappen lines up in 3rd position, George Russell in 4th, Sergio Perez in 5th there. But now it is time to go to the Grand Prix. We are back here in Imola for round 3 of the 2022 Formula 1 season here in Alternative Apex. It is time for the Grand Prix. We've just seen the sprint race, a very exciting race which saw an absolutely outstanding battle between the two Ferrari drivers, but now it's time to see what they can do in the race proper. This is when the big points are handed out. They will have got some points from the race in the sprint, but this is where the big points are given out, and this is where the championship sort of impact is felt a bit more, because the gap between the positions are much bigger. Of course, only 1 point difference between each position in the sprint, but in this race, 7 point difference between 1st and 2nd means that victory is so crucial to whoever ends up winning it. Starting from pole position is Charles Leclerc ahead of Carlos Sainz's teammate. Those two, as I said, great battling in the sprint, but let's have a look down the rest of the grid now. It is Verstappen who got quite close to the Ferraris at the end of the sprint race but couldn't quite do much. George Russell in 4th, Sergio Perez in 5th, Esteban Ocon in 6th, then it is Mick Schumacher and Kevin Magnussen in 7th and 8th, with Bottas and Hülkenberg rounding out the top 10 positions. Then just outside the top 10 we've had Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda, with Guan Yu Zhou and Lando Norris behind him. Then it's Sebastian Vettel, Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly, Fernando Alonso. Then it's Alexander Albon, Nicholas Latifi, and on the back row of the grid, we have some surprise faces. Two grid penalties for both Lewis Hamilton and Pascal Wehrlein means that they will be starting at the back of this race, and they will be exciting to watch as they make their way up the order. We see now the drivers on the grid ready for today's race. Got the Aston Martin safety car at the front of the field today. Hopefully, again, like in Saudi Arabia, we won't need to see the safety car. Of course, we've yet to see it so far this season, but hopefully that'll stay that way, because we don't want to see any crashes, because, well, we want to see proper hard racing. That's what we love as F1 fans, and that's why we're so excited for this race, because truly anything can happen in this one. Drivers on the grid, we saw, as I said, in the sprint, absolutely brilliant battles up and down the field, so can we expect the same from this race? I hope so, because that certainly would be exciting, and, well, that's what we want. So the Ferraris lead away on the formation lap, just like they did in the sprint. And now we prepare ourselves for today's race. Going to be interesting, as I said, to watch both Pascal Wehrlein and Lewis Hamilton starting on the back row of the grid. Neither of those two cars belong on the back row of the grid. I believe Hamilton had the retirement in the sprint race. It looks like he may have taken some grid penalties as well on top of that. And Pascal Wehrlein had a pretty miserable sprint race and decided to take a whole new power unit. Just gets those penalties out of the way, as I believe that may well have been what Lewis Hamilton did too. So both of those drivers taking the same idea, as they will be starting at the back anyway, so decided to take a new engine with it, which means that not only will they be out of position at the start and quicker than the cars ahead of them, but the fact they've got new engines at the back means they're going to be even quicker than they perhaps would have been anyway, so that is going to be exciting to see those two charge their way up the order. But now it is time for the race. The lights are out, and we are racing in Imola, this time for the Grand Prix, and it's a much better start for Carlos Sainz this time. Charles Leclerc was the one that got the good start last time out in the sprint, but it's Carlos Sainz who's going to take the lead of the race as they dive into turn 1. George Russell's had a great start there, something I find myself saying quite often this season. He's up into 3rd place as the two Red Bulls are battling it out for 4th position there, as they now swarm out of the Tamburello chicane, heading towards Villeneuve now. It is Carlos Sainz who leads this Grand Prix ahead of Charles Leclerc, but battling in the mid-pack. Mick Schumacher up into 6th position position. Valtteri Bottas in 7th, trying to challenge the Haas driver ahead of him. Doesn't look like he can quite do anything at the moment, but it is Carlos Sainz who leads this race as they make their way up the hill. And let's see, can he hold on, or will it be another mixed up race like the sprint? Kevin Magnussen at the end of lap 1 is already into the pit lane with wing damage. It must be from contact in the chicane as we see battling here over P8. This is Valtteri Bottas versus Esteban Ocon over P7, sorry. These two making their way through the first chicane, and it is Ocon who comes out on top on this occasion as they make their way back through the racetrack. Got Lewis Hamilton challenging Lance Stroll down the inside. That's a bold move. Oh, but look out for Pascal Wehrlein. He's going to go side by side with Lewis Hamilton as they make their way towards Aqua Minerale. Around the outside goes Pascal Wehrlein in the Porsche and up into 17th position. Those two already making lots of positions in this race. And Hamilton, I imagine he'll be straight back past the Porsche because that is not where that Mercedes belongs. Back down there in P18 as we now see, speaking of Porsche, Nico Hülkenberg on the move down the inside of Valtteri Bottas uses, well, a little bit of aggression there, but it's still not going to allow him to make the move. Or is it? Is there still side by side coming out of Tamburello, but Hülkenberg is able to get up into 8th position. Strong move there from the German driver, who now runs up in a very strong P8 as they're side by side for the lead of the race. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. Leclerc's going to go around the outside of turn 1, up the inside of turn 2, and that has got him into the lead. And speaking of battles, it's Max Verstappen versus George Russell here, battling away for that 3rd position as now George Russell is under pressure from Sergio Perez down the inside. Back to the outside. Can he make this one? Nico Russell gets a bit of a slide on the exit of the chicane there, and up down the inside goes Sergio Perez. They're still side by side though. Russell on the outside should get better traction here, and he will do. But will he be clear? No, that Red Bull looks like he's got a bit better power in that Porsche engine. Down the inside goes Sergio Perez. Oh, but he goes very deep, nearly off the road, and Russell's back through up into 4th place. Wow, that's some great racing here in the early stages of this Grand Prix. As now it looks like Carlos Sainz, he doesn't want to let his teammate run away with this one. He's seen what Charles Leclerc's done in the past, where when he gets the lead, he doesn't look back. And on this occasion, he does not want to let his teammate get away. But he can't quite do it at the moment. But he goes down the inside into turn 1. That's a bold move. Oh, but straight on. Charles Leclerc's made a mistake. Straight on at turn 1. He's in the gravel. He's going to struggle to get back on track. And just like Fernando Alonso, he's having to wait to try and find some sort of break in the traffic. He's down in 5th place and continuing to fall down the order as Carlos Sainz now has a comfortable lead out front. Charles Leclerc is down into 7th place. Or will it get worse for him? And that's Hülkenberg who's got past. Up into 7th position now. Charles Leclerc drops down to 8th. Now he's under pressure from Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo. This is not the battle that Charles Leclerc would have wanted today. He would have wanted to be battling his teammate, not the drivers in the midfield. He has now got very much a hard task on his hands to make his way back up there as we look on board there with Carlos Sainz. It just looks like, I don't know whether Carlos Sainz was going deep or whether Charles Leclerc sort of was going deep on his own. It's a hard one to tell, but we see now Charles Leclerc back up into 7th position. Oh, but no! Oh, that just adds insult to injury. Just when you think his race couldn't get any worse. It is another mechanical DNF for Charles Leclerc. 2 in a row now for the Monegasque Ferrari driver. He is out of this race, and Ferrari in their home race will not be happy at all with that. Carlos Sainz now with a very comfortable lead out front. I mean, it's going to take some beating for anyone else to get ahead of that Ferrari driver out front, because the Ferraris look like the only cars in the field that were that sort of competitive, as we see now a great battle continuing between Sergio Perez and George Russell, which now Charles Leclerc's mistake has put him, and of course the failure that happened afterwards, has put Russell up into the podium places. We see Max Verstappen peeling into the pit lane. Now the Red Bull driver pulling into his pit box. We see them racing around the racetrack, as you would do. But yes, Max Verstappen down pit lane. Let's see where he'll come out. And he's going to come out racing Guan Yu Zhou, going through this tricky part of the racetrack in the middle sector. Now heading towards Aqua Minerale. Surely not around the outside. Fresh tyres plus Red Bull downforce. That is what happens. Great move there from Max Verstappen, who gets himself up the road. But probably lost too much time behind Zhou there to make much happen. As Carlos Sainz does come into the pits here from the lead of the race and has got a 4-second lead to Max Verstappen in 2nd place. So that looks like it's very much Carlos Sainz's race to lose so far, but we are only halfway through. So anything could happen as we see Lewis Hamilton back to him going up, well, down the inside of 2 cars. As Tsunoda looks like he went wide. Hamilton's managed to get ahead of him. Almost got ahead of Sebastian Vettel as well, but couldn't quite pull off the move, as both Lewis Hamilton and Pascal Wehrlein continuing to make overtakes up the order now. Let's look at this battling through the mid-pack. lots of racing here. As now on his second attempt, Lewis Hamilton versus Sebastian Vettel. It's not often that you see these two battling over 11th position. We're used to sort of, well, 3-4 years ago, those two battling over 1st position, but instead it is over 11th. And on this occasion, Hamilton will come out on top. That Mercedes car looking better than that Aston Martin at this stage, not only of the race, but of the season. So interesting to see how that one plays out. It's now a lap later. It's one German versus another. Pascal Wehrlein versus Sebastian Vettel. And wow, what a move there. From Pascal Wehrlein, gets around the older German driver. Sebastian Vettel just could not fight that one off any harder than he did. The Aston Martin does not seem to have the grip at this stage. Just look at Hamilton already on the back of Daniel Ricciardo and making the move around the outside. Brilliant bit of racing there from Lewis Hamilton. Great racing indeed. What a move. What a wonderful move, if he can pull it off though, because Ricciardo's fighting back. Let's see how this one plays out. He's now going to be on the outside as they come back up the hill. Let's see, Lewis Hamilton versus Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo has proven to be a tough driver to defend so far this season, and on this occasion that continues. He holds off Lewis Hamilton just a little bit longer. Hamilton looking to the inside of Aqua Minerale. Unsurprisingly, he has to back out of that one. That was never going to work, not in a million years. But what will work is a simple DRS pass into turn 1. On this occasion, it is a much easier overtake, and he gets up the road ahead of the McLaren there. Not much could be done for Daniel Ricciardo as he now comes under pressure from Pascal Wehrlein in the Porsche. Hamilton now looking up further the road to see if he can get a few extra points in this race because he is now in the top 10. Pascal Wehrlein is on the back of Daniel Ricciardo now. Can he follow Hamilton through just a lap later? Then they'll be side by side into turn 1. Daniel Ricciardo's going to brake very late. They're nearly into the side of the Porsche, but they just about avoid contact. But Ricciardo does lose quite a bit of time there. But Wehrlein up into 11th position. Great move there. As Lewis Hamilton now already on the back of Yuki Tsunoda. Is he going to make a move into the chicane? Not quite able to. Oh, but Tsunoda straight on. Tsunoda's missed the chicane. Oh, nearly colliding with Lewis Hamilton there. And oh, that's going to be close as well. Oh, just about surviving there. Almost contact between both Pascal Wehrlein and Yuki Tsunoda. Lewis Hamilton running up the road ahead of these two. Pascal Wehrlein now up into the points-paying positions. But how long for Tsunoda? He made that mistake, but he looks like he wants to fight back in this race. He's going to get back into 10th position on lap 27 of 32. They're side by side, but Wehrlein fights back. A brilliant overtake there. Really great switchback on the AlphaTauri. Ricciardo is back in this fight for points. Let's see how this one plays out. Oh, but a lap later, Tsunoda, that's an unconventional place to make the overtake. But the confidence that he has, he's proven it already this season. He's not afraid to make some risky overtakes. He gets back up into the top 10 here. And we'll be looking to try and hold on to that position as we go towards the end of this Grand Prix. Got Nico Hülkenberg versus Mick Schumacher here on the final lap of the race. They're side by side through the first chicane, through Tamburello, and Hülkenberg gets up into P6 there. That would be a brilliant result for the Porsche team. Mick Schumacher wants to fight back as Porsche's battling all over the place, and now it's Pascal Wehrlein versus Yuki Tsunoda going through Tamburello as well, and it's another overtake for a Porsche and Tamburello. Brilliant racing here. Both Porsches gaining a place on the final lap of the race. Yuki Tsunoda does not look like he's able to fight back on this occasion, and he won't be able to fight back on this occasion. And out front, we haven't really seen much of him since the early stages of this race, but Carlos Sainz is going to get his first win in Formula 1 in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. A great victory there for Ferrari on home soil by, well, 11 seconds at the finish over Max Verstappen, who just did not have what it took to beat the Ferrari today. Sergio Perez will finish in 3rd position. George Russell will finish in 4th. And Esteban Ocon will be the first of the midfield cars. And I say midfield, he's a bit on his own. Got a 14-second gap in front and a 12-second gap behind. There must be, well, quite a boring race for Esteban Ocon, but I'm sure he'll take the 10 points that come with that 5th position. Across the line, the Frenchman comes to take a very solid result there for the Alpine team. And speaking of solid results, Nico Hülkenberg for Porsche. He's going to take his 2nd points finish of the season, but it's much more impressive this time. 8 points to Porsche. A great race for them, as he beats home Mick Schumacher, Valtteri Bottas, and Lewis Hamilton takes 9th position. As in 10th place, it's Pascal Wehrlein, who's going to take P10 in this race, so it's double points for Porsche. The first time we've seen that this season. It is 9 points in total for that team, so a very strong day for Porsche Motorsport. So there it is, our race winner, Carlos Sainz. A great drive today. He may have had a bit of luck with his teammates' problems, but he still put in an utterly brilliant drive today to take his first victory in Formula 1. And a first victory in Formula 1 with Ferrari on Italian soil. It just is a wonderful combination there, and you can see the Ferrari team very, very happy with that result. Red Bull taking 2nd and 3rd. Solid result for their Constructors' Championship aims, especially given that Charles Leclerc retired. But, I mean, Ferrari, I think they'll be happy that they won that race. And Red Bull perhaps got to scratch their heads a little bit because they just did not have the pace today. And they need to find something because, well, Carlos Sainz now leads the championship, and Charles Leclerc, I'm sure, once he stops having these mechanical failures, will be getting right up there as well. But today is Carlos Sainz Day. He wins in Imola. He wins the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Absolutely stunning drive by almost 11 seconds at the finish. What a drive for the Spaniard. Now, after this result, the question is going to be, can Carlos Sainz keep up this performance? His win here in Imola, with Charles Leclerc's issues, he's going to be leading this championship, with Sergio Perez only finishing third in this one. But let's have a look at who scored the most points overall this weekend. Of course, unsurprisingly, it's Carlos Sainz with 33 points taken away from this race weekend. Max Verstappen takes his second most points with 24 points, which is a number you don't often see taken away from a Grand Prix weekend. Of course, usually we see 25 or 26 for a race winner, but 24, of course, possible with the sprint race format. Sergio Perez takes the third most points away from the weekend. Other sort of noticeable things further down the order, we have Charles Leclerc only 8 points away from this weekend, but traditional race weekend he would have got nothing, so still better than last race, I suppose. Great race for Porsche there, with them as a team scoring 9 points, Hulkenberg getting 8 points then the Grand Prix. Wonderful drive once more from Hulkenberg, proving that he really can race that car up into a much higher position than when he starts. Of course, that is when he avoids wing damage, unlike last time out in Jeddah. Lewis Hamilton only gets 2 points away from the race, but after starting at the back of the field, sort of can't complain too much about that one. Ocon, 13 points for Alpine, a strong drive for him. As we now look over to the Drivers' Championship standings, and indeed it is Carlos Sainz who leads the Drivers' standings ahead of Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen there. An 8-point lead for Carlos Sainz, but a 25-point lead over Max Verstappen, who has been one of the sort of standout drivers this season, and a 30-point lead over his teammate. That is absolutely massive, and whilst there's a long way to go in this season, it's going to take some work from Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen to really cut into that lead, because whilst Perez is in second, only 8 points off, Perez hasn't been the most consistent threat this season. Of course, he did win last time out, but a lot happened last time out, and I don't know if that's going to be something that we see regularly race in, race out for Sergio Perez to be competing up front. But you could say the same for Carlos Sainz. It really is mixed up here with the drivers that we expected to be behind going into the season, now up at the front. It's going to be exciting how this season plays out, as reliability is clearly becoming quite a big factor in how this World Championship season plays out today. We can see them up in the top 10 of the Drivers' Championship, Nico Hulkenberg for Porsche on 9 points, so that's quite a cool thing to see for them. As we now look at the constructor standings, it's Ferrari who lead the way 3 points ahead of Red Bull, so that's very close in the Constructors' Championship, with both Red Bull and Ferrari having a similar amount of reliability issues. Unlike, of course, where the drivers have sort of, it's very clearly on the driver side of things been one driver more than other drivers with the reliability issues. Mercedes, 36 points off the lead. Realistically, they're not going to be fighting for this Constructors' Championship unless something big happens, which, of course, we can't rule out. They are going to be working on that car a lot to try and get it closed up to the Ferrari and Red Bull in terms of performance. But they've got quite the deficit to find, even if they do get to a point where they can start battling for race victories here. Alpine, pretty comfortable in that fourth position in the Constructors' Championship there, as they sort of seem to have separated themselves from the midfield, becoming more than just a midfield team, but equally they're still nowhere near being a top team just yet, so they're in a bit of a lonely position in the Championship. But I think that's better than being stuck in that quite chaotic midfield battle, which we've seen, especially today, really spill over at times, with several drivers having problems in that race. But that is it for round 3 of the 2022 Formula 1 season here in Alternative Apex. I hope you enjoyed today's race. Lots of drama in it. Quite a long race in terms of how long the video will be because of the sprint race. But yes, lots of action to pack into that one. So hopefully it wasn't too much packed into a too small amount of time. But either way, next time out we go to Miami, a track which in theory I imagine will be a little bit quieter. Of course I haven't got the sprint race, so we'll be back to a traditional qualifying format. But that track, I think there's definitely still be a lot of racing, but I'm not sure if it will quite be the craziness that we saw in Imola today. But after Miami we have Monaco, which really anything could happen in Monaco. You'd assume, yeah, boring race, it's Monaco, nothing's going to happen. But it's Monaco. You can never say nothing's going to happen in Monaco because the walls are so close. Strategy can play into things, traffic can play into things. I have no idea what to predict for the Monaco race. But next up is Miami, so hope you're all looking forward to that one. So make sure to tune in tomorrow for that. But that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. and hopefully I will see you next time. Goodbye.